This is a room in which there have been many challenging debates, moments of tension, differences in ideologies, and much frustration. But this is also a room by the very fact of being human. There are those who serve our city have more in common than they have differences. All share the same spectrum of potential for care, for compassion, for fear, for joy, and for love. Carl Sagan once wrote, "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love." There is in the political process much to bear. In this room, let us cherish and celebrate our shared humanness, our shared capacity for reason and compassion, our shared love for the people of our city, as well as our shared love for our Constitution and our democracy. And let us root our policy-making process in those values that are relevant to all, regardless of our religious belief or non-belief. In gratitude and in love, in reason and in compassion, may we work together for a better Vero Beach.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. With that, I'll open the July 15th regular City Council meeting. Mrs. Vaught, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fletcher?
Here.
Ms. Graves? Here. Mrs. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mayor Winger?
Here. Preliminary matters, agenda additions, deletions, and adoptions. Do I have any from the council, please?
No, Mayor.
No.
Seeing none.
Move for permitted.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We will move on to proclamations. Ms. Graves, I believe you have the first one.
Yes. Is Michelle Miller here? Michelle Miller? No? Okay. Whereas on Saturday, July 26, 2014, the Marine Industries Association of the Treasure Coast, in conjunction with the Florida Inland Navigation District, will conduct the 7th annual Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup. And this event will attract over 950 volunteers who will participate in cleaning up the waterways of Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties. And there will be 20 designated sites throughout the 3 counties that will serve as registration and disposal sites for the volunteers. And in 2013, over 7.6 tons of trash was collected from approximately 125 miles of waterways. And with an increased volunteer effort, this year is expected to be even greater. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, does hereby proclaim the week of July 20th to July 26, 2014 as Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week, and urge our citizens to volunteer to help promote preservation of the waterways and the environment.
Send that to Ms. Fox.
Oh, perfect.
Would you like to say
Yeah,
a
would you like to say something?
I would.
Okay.
Thank you
Oh,
very much.
absolutely.
I'd like to thank you all and encourage anyone in this room, if they have the time on Saturday, that would be next Saturday at 8 a.m. in the morning, to come help us. Since 2008, we've had 4,500 volunteers help with this initiative. We've also had 1,600 boats and collected 53.2 tons of trash out of our waterways. This is pretty good for the Indian River Lagoon. Just last year, Martin County collected 3.2 tons. St. Lucie County collected 2.6. Here in Indian River, with almost 1/3 less the volunteers, we collected 2.7 tons. So we have less people, but they're doing a bigger job for our river. And I'd like to thank you all for having us and giving us this proclamation today.
Before you go, I mean, you mentioned Saturday at 8 a.m. Where's everybody going to meet up ahead of time in case you want to get involved?
We have several different cleanup sites up and down the coast. starting up at Sebastian Inlet Marina, which is just over the line in Micco. I will be at the Sebastian Main Street ramp. We have one at the Wabasso ramp. We have one at the City Marina. We have one at Riverside. And I think that covers Indian River County.
Okay.
But on the 26th, it's only 4.5 hours. If you have a boat, it's great. If you have some room on your boat, we always have people waiting at the ramp for a chance to go out. That we send them to do the shoreline best they can, but if they can get out to one of the spoil islands, that's where really the problem is. But hopefully someday we won't have this job and people just take care of themselves.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You want to come forward and, okay. Don Voss?
Diana Voss is here for Captain.
We have a related proclamation which I'll read. Whereas Marine Cleanup Initiative Incorporated, the operator, director, the board of directors, the advisory board, and the hundreds of volunteer divers and boat captains, kayak and paddle boarders have operated for 13 years to remove marine debris such as monofilament fishing line, casting nets, cargo nets, batteries, anchors, chain rope, bottles, cans, and fishing gear from our Indian River Lagoon estuary, Indian River County, and whereas these efforts are accomplished by volunteers using their own time, their own equipment, and risking their own lives to provide the needed public service to protect our most important natural resource. And whereas these efforts have saved thousands of birds, fish, turtles, and other aquatic life from certain death through the elimination of all debris, including ghost fishing items such as abandoned tarps and nets, and whereas Marine Cleanup Initiative Incorporated is involved in all cleanups along the water, in the water, and on our spoil islands, as well as cleaning up invasive species such as lionfish, and whereas Marine Cleanup Initiative has brought national and international interest to our area through advocacy, volunteerism, and National Award for Service, all while removing over 425,000 pounds of debris. Now for the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, does hereby proclaim the month of July 2014 as Marine Debris Removal Month and encourages all citizens and businesses to properly dispose of trash and participate in activities which will assist in eliminating the accumulation of hazardous debris in our waterways.
Good morning.
Tell us about it.
Good morning. I am Captain Diana Boyd Voss. I'm a 14-year volunteer diver. Before Marine Cleanup Initiative actually formed, we started diving the Sebastian Inlet and doing cleanups and saw the need for cleaning our waterways from the bottom up. I want to thank the council for recognizing the month of July again this year as Marine Debris Removal Month. Marine cleanup strives to increase awareness of clean waterways and the need for clean waterways, and we do that through education as well as physical projects like our dive cleanups. More information can be found on our website, marinecleanupinitiativeinc.org, and also we have a very active Facebook page if anyone would like to contact us. We have speakers available to talk about what we find, how people can help. The Sebastian Inlet dive was last Saturday. There were 23 divers who participated, most of them residents of Indian River County. We collected over 1,200 pounds, mostly nets, fishing debris, anchors, ropes, fishing gear, a few poles, very few bottles and cans. I was surprised this year it was almost all nets. We've had a lionfish cleanup this year. We got over 500 lionfish in one day. We had 6 teams that were diving. We'll be doing that on a biannual basis. This year there'll be one more lionfish safari. We are really focusing in the lagoon. We see intrusion of this invasive species into the lagoon. They don't seem to be coming up north. They seem to be liking it around the structures and the mangroves around Fort Pierce. But we are keeping our eyes open further north in the lagoon. August 2nd is our 10th annual cleanup dive at the Fort Pierce Inlet. If anyone would like to join us there, we look forward to a large crowd and a really good party afterwards. Check the website, check the Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. The lionfish, how do you find them and dispose of them and so on? Are they hard to find?
They are not defined. They have no fear. They have no predators. They come right up to you. I can't remember the size of the largest one was over 5 pounds. It was huge. I mean, that was what it was like hanging from the hook. The lionfish are speared. There are teams that have invented different trapping devices so that once they spear them, they go into something to keep the barbs from getting close. There are only 12 of the fins that are actually venomous, and all that instruction is given to the divers. This year, they were all measured by the scientists from Harbor Branch. They were cleaned by volunteers and cooked and served to over 1,000 people who came out for that safari. And it's delicious. Watch for it on your favorite restaurant's menu. We are really trying to promote the eating of lionfish seems to be the best way to get rid of them.
Poetic justice there. Come forward and get your proclamation. Thank you so much.
Before you do, you mentioned the website. Could you let everybody know what the website is for the case they want to get involved?
The website is spelled out entirely, marinecleanupinitiativeinc.org. Thank you.
Thank you for the work you do.
Says right on the page. 12 poisonous fins. Oh.
All right, now we'll move on to scheduled public comment. Public comment's really in two forms. The first one are people that have scheduled and talked to someone in the city council or the city manager. The first one scheduled is Mr. Chef Wright, who is working on the electric utility, and he's going to give us an update.
Good morning, council members, Mr. Mayor, citizens. I'm glad to be back. The update this meeting relates to our planned initiatives to talk with both OUC and FPL regarding possible ways to amend our different agreements with them so that we can move forward with anything we can possibly do to lower rates. The immediate background of this is a letter that Mr. Richards, the utility manager, sent to OUC about 5-6 weeks ago, outlining to OUC several steps that we would like to take with respect to the fallout of retiring some of the units at the power plant. There are 8 or 10 specific sections of our power purchase agreement with OUC that would have to be modified in that connection. Additionally, because of our obligation to Florida Power and Light to maintain the plant in its present state that's embedded in our power asset purchase and sale agreement with FPL, we would have to talk with them too. The things are kind of mutually exclusive, and to accomplish this, both contracts really will have to be amended. We were concerned, as I think at least was OUC, that negotiations with another in these directions or negotiations with them could give rise to concerns about a possible breach of contract obligations or possibly claims of interference by somebody against somebody else. So to address that, I drafted a waiver letter that for signature by the council's representative, by FPL and by OUC. And after a couple of exchanges of draft, we got the letter that I think you have. We just got we got FPL's signature last week. Mr. Browder, OUC's general counsel, was on vacation last week, but he kindly put it at the top of his to-do list when he got back in the office yesterday and got it off to us yesterday afternoon. So we have that, and I think Mr. Comment's going to ask you for approval of his having signed it. But the good news is that will enable us to move forward with whatever it is we want to do. Immediately, there are these issues related to the potential, and there's a lot of stuff that has to happen, a lot of moving parts, but issues relating to potential retirement of some of the units or all of the units at the power plant that we believe would enable us to save money. To accomplish that, we got to have a transmission study. We have the transmission study. We have to figure out what the transmission solution is, and we have to figure out if that's economic, and then move forward. But we can move forward now with these and with others. As you saw in the letter, it's very clear that anything that we can do to lower rates is within the bounds of what we can discuss without implicating any possible lawsuits by anybody against anybody else. And like I said, we got the executed letter back from OUC yesterday, and I'll move forward to talk with both OUC and FPL as soon as possible, including this week. I know Councilmember Turner and I are going to be at the FMEA, FMPA meeting this week, and if I see the OUC folks there, if Jan or Chris are there, I'll talk to them and try to keep that rolling. And that's really about it for this report. I haven't got any new ideas on my own about how to further the sale, nor have I heard of any new ideas for how to further the sale from Florida Power and Light. And lawyers' schedules being what they are, I have exchanged some voicemails with the attorneys for Indian River Shores and Indian River County, but I haven't actually spoken to them.
Mrs. Turner.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just for the public to make clear then, so with this agreement, there is nothing in the PSA purchase sales agreement stopping VERO from moving forward with measures to lower our rates.
Well, to be clear, there's nothing to prevent us discussing measures to lower our rates with OUC or with FPL as far as that goes.
Yeah, once we have exact
to the extent we get to the point where we have, say, a batch of amendments to either agreement, then that might implicate different results.
Thank you.
But
other questions?
That's several rounds of discussions down the road, I think.
Other questions from council? Oh, Wayne, is there something needed to?
Yeah, if you would, I did, to expedite things, I did go ahead and send the letter at Shep's request so that we could get it out and get the signatures from the other parties, their representatives. So if the council could give us at least a motion and a voice vote to approve that action, I would appreciate it.
I'll make the motion to approve that action. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries 5-0.
Thank you. Just a Chef, real quick question. No matter what we do, because we're in this contract with FP&L, do they pretty much have to give their blessing for just about any type of contractual change that we want to do to lower our rates?
I'm going to say probably not. That was a very broad and categorical question. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of stuff we can do to lower rates that would not require FPL's approval. There's a lot of stuff there's some stuff anyway we can do to lower rates that probably would not require OUC's approval vis-a-vis our PPA relationship with them. So I hesitate to say that.
Well, let me give you an example. If we decided to renegotiate the OUC contract, which would extend past the 2 years, the contract with FP&L, I would imagine we would have to have FP&L inclusion in that because it's making the assumption that we'd be in the business past 2 years.
I think that's a true statement. And naturally enough, because of our good relationships with both parties, we'll be talking to them.
Okay.
Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
No, sir, I do not. But I will say that we are trying to, as Chef pointed out, trying to still be creative if there is a way to pull the sale off. But at the same time, we have been in conversations. Jan Asbrew and I have had several conversations pertaining to OUC's commitment, and he has assured me that they would work with us in trying to get through some of the issues. We are in the process of drawing up the request for the transmission study. We do have a little issue on the capacity and trying to figure out, do we need the capacity before or after the transmission? And Chef and I will be looking at that as well.
Anything further from council or staff? All right. Thanks, Chef.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Travel safe.
Thank you very much.
You and Mrs. Turner, I guess, huh? Next, we have Doug Carlson from the Mosquito Control. He's going to give us a PowerPoint presentation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Doug Carlson. I'm the director of the Indian River Mosquito Control District, and I certainly would like to thank the council today for the opportunity to speak to you. And my reason for this request is really twofold. First, about 2 weeks ago was our National Professional Association's annual Mosquito Control Awareness Week, and wanted you to be aware of that. And the purpose of this annual event is to educate the public about the importance of mosquito control efforts in our daily lives and how people can help that effort. Secondly, though, and really most importantly, I'd like to explain to you the imminent threat that Florida faces from two different mosquito-transmitted viruses, something that you may have read about over the past month or so or perhaps seen on television. Those of you who have lived in Florida, in Indian River County in particular, for a number of years may be familiar with one virus, St. Louis encephalitis, and that has been rather prominent in the state of Florida dating back to the 1960s. There had been several epidemics of this particular virus, the first of those being in the 1960s, another one in 1978, and again in 1990. And as this slide shows, this particular virus is carried by birds and transmitted by mosquitoes, with man only occasionally being infected. In 1999, many of you have probably heard of the fact that West Nile virus entered the United States in New York City, and just 2 years later, in 2001, it had made its way to Florida. And West Nile virus is very similar to St. Louis in that it too is carried by birds, transmitted from bird to bird, and only occasionally bird to man by a mosquito known as Culex nigropaupus. This particular mosquito is a freshwater one, produced primarily in groves, pastures, and swales, similar to the slide that you're seeing in front of you now, and it largely is a nighttime biter. It is, in fact, the most common mosquito in Indian River County, but fortunately, it isn't an aggressive biter of man. So these two viruses, SLE, St. Louis encephalitis, and West Nile, now have been with us for up to several decades, certainly with SLE in particular, and many of you may have read over the years how we do monitor for these two viruses with our Sentinel Chicken program. In 2009, though, a different virus appeared in our state which had not been locally transmitted in Florida for about the past 90 years. Its name is dengue, which is also, and the virus is also known as breakbone fever because of the very severe joint pain associated with an infection from this virus. Some of the other symptoms that individuals typically encounter are high fever, a severe headache, pain behind the eye, nausea, and a rash. And under some very severe circumstances, this disease can be fatal. This virus, though, is transmitted by container-producing mosquitoes, different than what I had just discussed with West Nile and St. Louis encephalitis. And the two mosquitoes that are the transmitters of this virus are the yellow fever mosquito, the scientific name being Aedes aegypti, and also the Asian tiger mosquito known as Aedes albopictus. These mosquitoes bite primarily during the daytime, And this breakbone fever, as it's referred to, is transmitted directly from man to man by these two mosquito species, as shown in the bottom left-hand portion of this slide. It's quite common for people to travel around the world to areas where dengue is occurring and bring the virus back to the United States. In Florida, though, from 1920 to 2009, there were no cases of local transmission that occurred in the U.S. But this changed in 2009 and 2010, where there were a total of 93 cases of local transmission documented in Key West, actually in the Old Town section of Key West. This, in fact, equaled one of the highest rates of infection per capita recorded, and the 93 cases that were documented was probably maybe 10% of the total number of people who were actually infected over that 2-year period. Last year, another local outbreak occurred, and this time closer to home for us. It was in Martin County when there were 23 cases of dengue, and they were identified in the Rio and the Jensen Beach areas. Now we have yet another mosquito-transmitted virus that has become established in the Western Hemisphere. Its name is a bit odd. It's called chikungunya, and it is a disease which historically occurs in Eastern Africa, as well as some of the islands in the Indian Ocean. And this rather strange name comes from an African language translation referring to illness of the bended walker. And the symptoms of chikungunya are similar to dengue, with the primary characteristic being severe joint pain, thus producing an arthritic type condition, hence the bent walker being mentioned here. However, unlike dengue, the vast majority of people who are infected with chikungunya do demonstrate symptoms, and in severe instances, the disease can last well over a year. Again, though, like dengue, the container-inhabiting mosquitoes that I mentioned are the ones that also transmit chikungunya. This virus first appeared in the Caribbean only about 7 months ago, in December of 2013, and just over that rather short time span, about 350,000 suspected cases have been identified, encompassing about 22 different island nations. To date, as of the end of last week, 81 returning visitors from the Caribbean have brought this disease back to Florida, spread out over 20 different counties, and it also has been detected in individuals returning to the U.S. in 20 different states. So my basic reason for speaking to you today is to familiarize you with this imminent threat that these viruses pose to our area, and to ask for your help, especially if local transmission in Indian River County were to become apparent. And that assistance is to help us get out the word to encourage citizens to take personal action in combating this threat. So first question would be, well, how can they do that? As I mentioned, the two mosquito species which transmit dengue and chikungunya are known as urban mosquitoes. They're produced in containers, tires, flower pots, clogged rain gutters, tree holes, even the plant bromeliad. Consequently, the best way to combat transmission is to clean up these water sources where the immature mosquitoes can develop. These mosquitoes are not produced in swales or ditches or salt marshes or other habitats. They really are specific to container-type situations. And also, these mosquitoes do not fly long distances, typically no more than several hundred yards. So an individual cleaning up his or her yard does go a long way towards stemming the problem in their neighborhood, if their neighbors are cooperating. And unfortunately, people do not always do what can be a rather simple task, and we truly need for the public to take personal responsibility in eliminating residential sites that can hold water in this fashion. Our office does not do this type of door-to-door work now, and it would in fact be extremely difficult to do that thoroughly in the event of an outbreak, and we certainly will need the public's help should this come to fruition. For many years, our mosquito control district has cooperated with several local offices in working to carry out our tasks. They include our medical entomologist, Dr. Don Schroyer, who is in attendance today, working with the Indian River County Health Department. And we have Dr. Barbara Progulski with us today as well, too. We also work closely with the University of Florida's Florida Medical Entomology Lab, which is down on Oslo Road. And this sort of continued cooperation will be very important should these diseases become established in our area. Just about a little bit over a month ago now, the Florida Medical Entomology Lab hosted a workshop dealing with the threat to Florida of these two viruses. This meeting was very well attended by over 120 professionals, primarily from Florida, individuals employed by mosquito control programs or local health departments. And this meeting did help set the framework for how to respond to these threats, and the FMEL Director, Dr. Walter Tabachnik, and his staff should be commended for this important effort. There were visitors or participants here from as far away as California and the Cayman Islands. Over about the past 2 years, our office has worked with Barbara and her colleagues at the Health Department in developing a local response plan for dengue, and this plan is now being modified to include chikungunya and is being updated based on some of the information that we learned at this recent workshop. So to summarize, given the fact that there is a high incidence of several mosquito-transmitted diseases on our doorstep, essentially, Florida is currently facing what truly can be called a serious threat that these viruses could become established locally. We are taking steps to be prepared for such an event. However, agency cooperation and especially public notification will be critical to try and make certain that these viruses, these diseases, don't harm our residents and visitors. We hope that should this sort of an outbreak occur, that we can call on you and your staff to try and help us get the word out for folks to help themselves. Finally, we don't want this area to again be known by the county name that it truly had back about 200 years ago in the 1820s and 1830s, just prior to statehood, which occurred in 1845, which was Mosquito County. With that said, thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Are there questions from members of City Council or staff?
I have a question. Mr. Carlson, do you have like a pamphlet or a brochure with this information?
We certainly do.
Because that's something that we could include in our utility bills. We do ones for the lagoon, but if there was an outbreak and we needed to let people know about keeping their containers clean,
well, they could be doing it right now. Really being proactive in this sort of an event is to our advantage, and perhaps I could speak to someone who would be appropriate on your staff if the council would be willing to cooperate in that fashion, or...
I would be very happy to talk to him. Putting it in the utility bill is a little more complicated than just sticking it in an envelope. But I think we can have distribution, especially around City Hall, and maybe put something on our website.
I have a question for you, Doug. You fly the yellow airplanes, right?
Yes, sir.
What are your other, are you spraying or dropping material, or what are you doing?
Right. That is what we call larviciding, which is chemical applications to kill mosquito larvae, but that's really only done in the salt marsh for controlling salt marsh mosquitoes. It wouldn't be applicable in a situation like this, but it is an important part of our program in controlling salt marsh mosquitoes, which was the reason that mosquito control was formed here back in 1925. And I know the Graves family has played a very important role in mosquito control, with several of your family members being commissioners over the years.
What other programs do you have besides that one? I'm curious. I know the marshes and so on. But
certainly, we approach mosquito control like most programs do around the country, around the world in an IPM or an integrated pest management approach. As far as our salt marsh mosquitoes go, we have a series of impoundments that we manage to prevent the mosquitoes from salt marsh mosquitoes from laying their eggs in those locations. Where that isn't available to do is where we're doing our aerial larviciding. And where that too hasn't maybe quite done the trick, we do our truck-based adulticiding, which is what most people associate with mosquito control. The other part of our program, which perhaps someday Dr. Schroyer could talk to you about, is our Sentinel Chicken program for the detection of the St. Louis encephalitis, West Nile, and Eastern equine encephalitis. So we do have a disease surveillance program. One effort to try and stem the number of tires that we have in Vero Beach and Indian River County is we do have a tire pickup program that is ongoing. And since 1990, we have collected, I believe it's 780 tons just on tires on the side of the road and in vacant lots. They just multiply on their own, it seems, like mosquitoes. Those are the basic components of our program. Again, the primary focus is salt marsh mosquitoes because they can fly 20 or 25 miles. In the event of a disease situation of St. Louis or West Nile, or when we have a tropical storm or a hurricane come through and there are high numbers countywide, we do have the ability to do aerial spraying, aerial adulticiding as well, but we do that very infrequently.
Okay, thanks for your comments. For the public, one of the interesting things is mosquito county or whatever it was called. They say in Land Remembered in other books that it was actually difficult for the Indians to live more than just a short distance from the coast. The mosquitoes were so bad. So it's an interesting history we have.
Great.
Ms. Turner?
I just want to thank Mr. Crossland so much for helping raise the public awareness of this issue, particularly, simple things that we can be doing around our home, to help avoid this problem. Thank you.
Well, I should know better, and yet over the past 2 or 3 weeks, on 2 occasions, I found mosquito larvae in my bird bath that I quickly dumped out, but it's very easy for that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells, will you come forward, please?
Good morning, Mayor and council members. I have to compliment Doug on his mosquito control because he does touch and goes over my rooftop about every 2 weeks and clears it by about 2 feet, and I haven't had one mosquito since I've been in Vero Beach, but I wish he'd get busy on the no-see-ums. So, anyway, I'm Jim Wells and reside at 2180 Dunmore Lane, Vero Beach, Florida 32963, and I represent the Friends of the Vero Beach Dog Exercise Area, Inc., I wish we could get rid of that name, DBA, the Vero Beach Dog Park, a Florida nonprofit organization. Today is your opportunity to transform what has been our dog exercise area for more than a decade into our field of dreams for both people and dogs, into a uniquely wonderful park in terms of ambiance, amenities, and location that is open year-round, free to all to enjoy, dogs or no dogs. We ask that you ratify today your Planning and Zoning Commission's unanimous recommendation for approval of our site plan as commented upon by Mr. Tim McGarry, Director of your Planning and Zoning Department, along with his own recommendation. We are then prepared to pull a building permit as soon as practicable to commence phase 1 of our improvements, with the first priority being building a fence as shown in the site plan. Upon issuance of the building permit, we will immediately place our order for fencing materials and begin construction as soon as possible upon receipt of same. On behalf of our Board of Directors, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to the City Council and all the City staff, especially Rob Slezak of the Rec Department, who have been so very cooperative in guiding us through this long and highly complex transition process. Thank you.
For the Mayor and Council, you have a copy of a memorandum that was sent out by Tim McGarry and myself pertaining to the dog exercise area. And I guess we're looking for a vote from the council to approve this, if that is what you wish. P&Z has reviewed it and voted unanimously to approve it. We also took it to the Recreation Commission. They did not take a vote, but did see the plan. We took it to the Marine Commission. The Marine Commission said that they were going to be sending us a letter. We have not received that letter as of this date.
I do believe, Wayne, that it's appropriate to ask for public comment before there's any vote. Isn't that not correct?
Certainly.
And I also believe that I read the Marine Commission minutes, and they had some concerns for what it's worth. Would anyone like to come forward on the dog park and speak to it? Now is the time if you would like to do so. Seeing nobody, come forward. That's what it's for.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Amy Robinson. I'm a dog trainer here in town. And from a training perspective, I can tell you that an exercise dog is a happy dog. And many of our owners, some of them are not physically able to walk their dogs the 2 and 3 and 4 miles a day that some of these breeds require. And some of those animals would end up in shelters. The second point I wanted to make is that I think that I've seen the site plan. It's gorgeous. I think the improvements for the park would enhance it to the point where it would look much like the rest of Riverside Park. Beautiful. Trees, landscaping, natural areas. And one of the things I liked very, very much about the plan is that there is a segregated area to be determined for people who want to enjoy that section of the park that do not have a dog and do not necessarily want to be approached by a loose dog. The third thing I wanted to say is that I have attended the park on several occasions and have been really impressed with the sort of self-policing that goes on. It's not that easy to get this many people and dogs together amicably, and this group has accomplished that very, very well. Their members are very good about cleanup, talking to each other and communicating with each other and keeping their dogs under control. And the main thing is that once that fence gets up, there's no potential anymore for any dog to cross that little loopy road that goes in front of the river house and potentially get in the way of somebody trailering a boat. So all in all, the site plan just blew me away, and the plans that this group has made and their self-sufficiency and the fact that there's no burden on the taxpayer. It seems to me like it's just a win-win for really everybody. And I want to thank you for the recent work you've done as far as allowing leashed dogs in some of the other parts of Riverside Park and some of the other parks. I think it was a great thing to do, and it has been a positive development. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments. Further comments, Mr. Moocher?
Mark Mucher, 617 Indian Lilac Road. As most of you know, I live in the area and drive by there 10, 12 times a day. I would just encourage you to have Public Works and the police department cooperate in putting up no parking signs along the Indian River Drive East, because there are signs that say no motor vehicles, but there are lots of cars in front of those, behind those. They're just totally ignored. And when that fence gets up there, and it's going to have a gate in it, I don't know whether the gate will be open or not, but it'll look like a big grass parking lot for that thing. So if you could have, and neighbors have called the police department, and they've said that they can't enforce the no parking because I guess the lack of the signs and maybe the no motor vehicle signs are not enforceable under code. I don't know if you have a comment on that, Wayne or Jim, but I would just encourage you to do that and make it enforceable and actually enforce it, because the first few dog lovers that get tickets, the word will spread and the problem will be solved. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. I'd like to stay on the dog park if there's any further.
That was the dog park.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. Your comments. Would you like to talk about the dog park?
I would like to speak about the dog park.
Okay, fine.
We're a dog owner. We have a rescue dog, and the dog park is largely responsible for our dogs getting socialized with other animals. but she wasn't really good around other dogs. She was very protective. But due to the dog park and her being off leash, it allowed her to be more socialized around other animals.
We know who you are, but you didn't tell
Oh, I'm
us.
sorry. Scott Cavanis, Shark Bay Beach Gear Rentals. I live in Vero Beach, Florida. Thank you.
Anyone else on the dog park? We'll move on to other subjects. Mr. Digg?
Good morning, Council. Ken Degg, 1846 21st Avenue. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Council. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Wells and all the people involved with the dog park situation. They worked very hard. I do not own dogs, but I have friends with dogs. One of the things that they like, and it's a lot of my friends on the mainland, the park is open to all. And these people do know that these folks they're putting in their money to do the fencing. It's been quite involved. I was at the P&Z meeting. Your P&Z board did ask questions. I think they did a very good job to come up with their decision. I hope that you go with their recommendations. And again, thank you to Mr. Wells and his group. They've done a wonderful job. And again, thank you, thank you. It's open to all. There's no fees. We all can use it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Turner, you have a comment?
Yes, a question, a point of order. Is a city council vote required? This goes to P&Z and it's approved.
No, yes, because the lease requires the council to approve any improvements to the property.
Any further public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion or discussion as you see fit, Mrs. Turner.
Just one more question. Notes from the Marine Commission. I did review their minutes, but any idea when we might get that information? And
They said that they were going to have another meeting and they're drafting a letter, but have another meeting to vote on the letter coming forward. Their issue, I believe, after reading the minutes as well, was on the expansion of the marina. If you put this dog park into perspective, really it's a 5-year initial lease, and so we have turnaround. We also reserved that 40-foot against the Indian River Lagoon for any type of dockage out there. But I think the time frames of expansion of the marina is considerably behind what this lease would provide for.
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I move to adopt staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just under conversation here, I think next time this needs to be an agenda item. I mean, we are approving something, and it just seems like we put this under public comment and actually did city business. If we could perhaps next time.
Yeah, probably should have been under city manager, so.
Okay, well, are we okay to proceed with the vote? Is that okay, Wayne?
Sure.
All right, is a voice vote okay on this?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0. We'll move on to further topics. You're up here, and I would presume you guys want to talk about the beach.
Yes, thank you. I'm Timothy McNamee, the Vero Beach Lifeguard Association board member. We'd like to, let you guys know that we have purchased 3 automatic blood pressure cuff monitors for the 3 beach towers to help as part of our mission to improve the safety and enjoyment of the beaches. I think we're also in the process of getting a pulse oximeter also that also help aid in terms of providing proper information for people that are being attended to by the lifeguards in coordination with EMS in those regards. So we are working to try and keep improving things. These monitors are helpful in the sense that with the activity and the noise and the surf on the beach, it's very helpful to have an automatic monitor so they're not trying to listen to heart sounds and the surf and people talking around that. So it is a necessary and needed item in that regard. So, and also Scott would like to speak on the issue.
Yes, again, Scott Cavanis, Shark Bay Beach Gear Rentals, Vero Beach, Florida, also board of directors for the Vero Beach Lifeguard Association. I would like to comment on the extension of hours for Hummiston Beach, and I know it's a hot topic with budgetary constraints being a primary concern, but I would like to stress that we do have a prefabricated erosion prevention barrier that is in that beach. It's the only guarded beach that does have that kind of a hazard, and it's also the most visited by tourists in the area. So I really think that to have those hours extended with the other people, I understand it's a $30,000 hit on the budget, but the payoff could be huge in the long run to have those hours extended.
Thanks.
And that's pretty much all I have about that. Oh, I would like to comment about the Marine Cleanup Initiative. Great people, and all of that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a comment about the Vero Beach Lifeguard Association. They have really made a lot of contributions. The other thing they have done is brought awareness to our beaches, and we appreciate their efforts. And it is sort of a grassroots organization. It comes up, we do have conflicts on how we spend money, I guess, but really as an entity that was brought about by our lifeguards and bringing in some of the businesses in the community, I think they've really made an awareness. And for a lot of people in our community, I'm not sure that they understood what lifeguards really did and how they work, but I think that has really helped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Whittle.
Herb Whittle, 19 Park Avenue in Vero Beach. First of all, I noticed you haven't taken any bulbs out, like I suggested. But I want to talk about the lagoon and the fertilizer ordinance. I see that Mr. O'Connor is working with Joe Baird to get Alexis over here, and we need it. 2 weeks ago, I was going to the National Estuary Program. I'm coming down 60 at 9 o'clock in the morning, and 1 block from here, the guy's blowing grass out onto 60. So I stopped. I talked to him, and I said, you know, you blow that grass out there, it goes into the lagoon. He said, oh. And he turned around and he blew grass the other way. So you just need to talk to him. But I think going to these meetings, there's nobody from the city council at any of them. There's 2 or 3 people, county commissioners go to the different meetings, but I think you need to appoint a point person for the lagoon. Interesting enough, FDOT had a meeting here about a week ago to discuss the fact they were going to clean all the ditches on US 1 from one end of the county to the other down the lagoon. And Monty Fall was here, and he said, you know, none of them are in the city. And they were all in the county, but they had the meeting here, so the county didn't show up. I went to the meeting up at National Estuary, and I talked to them about it, that what they were going to do is dredge all these channels, and every time then, after they take all the plants out, when we get a heavy rain, all that muck is going to go directly into the lagoon. So I wrote that on there, and there's been several things since then. But I told Solari, Commissioner Solari, who was at the National Estuary meeting because he's on the board, and he said he didn't know anything about it, but he would talk to him. So FDOT did their thing here, so it was out of the counties. But anyway, that's what I would like you all to do, and that's what I'm here for. Just, we need to work with the lagoon. We're putting money in to dredge it, and then we're putting money in to get more silt into it. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. But one side isn't talking to the other, so we all need to be working at this.
How many of these meetings are there, and when are they, and all that sort of thing?
Well, the National Estuary Program, they're reorganizing, and it was a reorganization meeting. Hopefully they'll have another one in probably a couple of weeks, because they were discussing a lot of programs and what they were going to do and where they're going to put money and how they're going to allocate their money. And it affects the whole lagoon. And then, you know, there's a meeting that the 5 commissioners from the 5 counties have, and that one's coming up, I think, July 26th or something here. And it's always held here at the county commission office, because we're in the center of those 5. But I think someone ought to attend from the city as well.
Do you attend all these?
I try to, if I can.
I would volunteer through November, and then, of course, November, we have election and things change to accompany you if I'm here. And if you notify me, I won't be here the 26th. As you know, I have a job, so I'll be traveling that day.
Well, unfortunately, I won't be here the 26th either.
But I'm sure Mrs. Turner or Mr. Kramer, if I can't do it, would be happy to do it. These meetings sometimes I don't know. I'm not always on top of them. So what I'm asking is, if you want to be the person to push one of us, I think we're all 5 of us would be happy to.
All right, I will keep you informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's our great honor to have you, Madam.
Mayor Winger, member of the City Council. I'm Alma Lee Loy. and my address is 2036 35th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I'm a native and a full-time resident of Vero Beach. You know, I'd love to come to more of these meetings, but I run out of time, just like you all do. So, but this morning, I'd like to talk to you just a minute because of an ordinance that's going to be coming up a little bit later. My background of service to my community consists of many years of helping develop areas of recreation in both the city and the county. We are so fortunate in this community to have as many parks as we do. And you know, parks, they serve a multitude of not only residents, visitors, they mean so much to so many. And they're all there for a specific reason. And one of the main reasons that I can think of for the number of parks that we have that need to be protected is for the future generations. We need to make sure that these parks and cemeteries are set aside so that future generations will know that we remember them. So I'm really here, in short, to recommend and urge you to please adopt the ordinance that you have before you today and protect all these wonderful things that have been developed over many, many, many years and enjoyed by so many. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for your time. Further public comment? Mr. Gafanti?
Good morning. My name is Joseph Gafanti. I live at 441 Holly Road in the city of Vero Beach. There was an article in the local paper, the Press Journal, on the 10th of July, indicating that the mayor proposes a new utility plan. In the article, it mentions something about the sale would violate the bond covenants. That's the message that I got from your attorney, the $275 an hour attorney, Mr. Wright, the last time I was here. After I listened to his presentation, I came forward and mentioned that stated that the bonds were an impediment to the sale. Your city attorney had a different opinion, and we got into a non-hostile debate about what was going on. I thought we were arguing about the meaning of the word impediment. Apparently that wasn't the case. His position was that the bonds are not an impediment to the sale. So I misconstrued what was going on, and it's not the first time I've done that. Bottom line is that it says in the paper that the bonds the sale would violate, a bond covenants, which is, again, what your attorney that you're paying for said. And for some reason, the city attorney didn't get that. So I just want to set the record straight that I was right in saying that they are an impediment. It goes on to say that the mayor wants an independent authority to govern the power system. And that's, at first glance, you say, well, it's obvious that that's a diffusion of the issue. It's to get us away from reality and divert our attention to something else. The bottom line is that the sale apparently has failed. I don't know if it's failed or not. One day it's a done deal, the next day it's a dead deal. And the last I heard, it was a dead deal and it couldn't go forward. Now this morning I learned that you have a contract with Florida Power and Light, which we already knew, and now you're telling us that the sale can't go through, but yet we have to live by this contract, which will never come to fruition. So now we're binded by Florida Power and Light to things that we can and can't do, which is ludicrous because the sale's not going to go through, or so I've been told. Although this morning they say, well, we're working on it. Well, I don't see how anybody's working on it. So now we're encumbered by Florida Power and Light and this contract that we have with them. I don't understand that. Why you can't go to Florida Power and Light? Look, we can't make a deal. Let's rip up the sale agreement, purchase sale agreement. I think that's what it's called. Talking about redundancies. But after the fusion, the smokescreen about this authority, you think about it more, and it's an admission of incompetence. You people apparently are supposed to be running the power system. That's what I gather from the paper. You're in charge of running the power system. So now the mayor says that, well, we got to find somebody who's competent. And it's an indication that, you know, it's an admission of, and it's an accusation of not only, it's an admission maybe on his part, but it's an accusation against the other people and the city manager, whoever else is involved, that you can't handle the job. But now you want to get somebody else to do it. And I'm on thin ice here because when Fletcher and agrees with, or we have the same position, I get a little bit nervous. It happens once in a while, and Fletcher is against this, so the paper says. And I can see why, because you're just passing the buck, and you're putting it out of the public's eye and into somebody else's back pocket. But if you're going to do this, I have a suggestion that who to get on this board. You start out with the Tunic and Gabbard. You get the Sloan, wherever he disappeared to, get him back here. Give Nick over at the FMPA a part-time job. Let him be part of the operation here. And of course, Nason, you got to have him here to run it. That's what I would do. Or you can get the New York Port of Authority. The people down there, the guy quit his job there for closing up the bridge. Get him down here to run the power plant. That might work. The idea of passing this on to somebody else is completely ludicrous. It's a shame that people come up with bad ideas. The real shame is that no matter how bad an idea is, there's always some naughty who's willing to jump on the bandwagon and go for this kind of nonsense. I know I used more than my 3 minutes, and I appreciate that in a way. I just want to check my notes here, because I don't work for anybody. Nobody, I'm not on anybody's payroll, so I have a limited amount of time to do this. Yeah, I just want to follow up, end with this in conclusion, as I say. Kramer says, according to this article, quote, "It's just a matter of time," end of quote, "that a few $1,000 will influence an election." A matter of time? It's already happened. It's already happened. But people read this stuff and believe it. Good day.
Thanks for your comments. Mr. Wilson, you'd like to come forward?
My name is Charles Wilson, 2134 18th Avenue. I'm a resident of the city of Vero Beach. I apologize, I have something of a cold today, so you'll have to spray down this whole, that's why I was last. Before I begin, I wanted to say I was struck by opportunity for free speech, that we showed free speech when we started this meeting today. And free speech means letting people talk even when you don't agree with them. So even when we have a prayer to Carl Sagan, it's still their right to be able to make these comments, and I defend their right to be able to make these comments, which leads me to later on in this agenda, when a very blatant attempt is being made to change the rules to be able to limit speech before this council. When that comes up, I urge you to reject that. And my first question is, who put this on the agenda? Who thought this was a good idea? Was this a staff? Was this a council member? Was this a special interest that asked to be able to limit speech so that they could limit criticism? Now, as to the sale, the no sale on the electric issue has left the residents of Vero Beach holding a bag of debt. In 2009, I was elected to the City Council with a simple message. That's if we can't be competitive in the electric business, we need to be out of the electric business. 5 years later, we're in debt, deeper. We're paying more. We're still, the idea of rate reductions, meaningful rate reductions, are simply a pipe dream and cannot be reached. Before the last election, we were told by the current council majority that this was a done deal. Now, 6 months later, it's a dead deal, and we're told to get over it. That's very much like Hillary Clinton going, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a lot of difference. Let me make it clear. The only decision worse than getting into the FMPA is to accept any plan that requires us to stay in the FMPA. So what now? Is there any hope? Who is watching out for Vero Beach, and what can we do? Mayor Winger, certainly a plan to sell for a fair price, as you championed, agreed upon by two parties acting in good faith, is the best option and may still be achievable. Unfortunately, selfish special interest may have killed our best option. That does not mean that the current agreement on the table isn't useful. The current agreement being on the table is a useful structure to work with. It'll have to be heavily amended, but it is a useful thing to still be an option. There is another way to separate ourselves from the FMPA. It is longer, harder, and more expensive. But a group of dedicated citizens are working with experts on a plan that can have us out of the FMPA by 2016. You'll hear more about this plan in the coming weeks. But I'm here to say, I'm surrounded by the message that sounds like Tokyo Rose, where a broadcast into going, silly American sailors, give up, surrender. You will never be able to defeat the Imperial Japanese Navy. And what we're hearing is you'll never be able to defeat the Imperial FMPA. I reject that plan. We will not give up. We will not surrender. But a path forward takes 3 pro-sale city council members dedicated, not just accepting, but dedicated to finding an option to get us out of the utility business. Because if you think it's bad now, let me tell you and tell the public it's going to get worse. Much, much worse. So we're at the crossroads here in Vero Beach. We have 2 choices being offered to us. Give up, shut up, and pay our bill, or stand up for Vero Beach and fight. I choose to stand up for Vero Beach and fight. We're going to have a plan that gets us out. All this talk about there is no option is simply inaccurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Lamson.
Good morning, and I hope I don't catch your cold, Mr. Wilson. I have a brief statement. I've cut down a little bit of it, but I have a copy of a full statement that I'd like you all to read, and also 2 letters that I will reference in my statement in full for you after I read it. So, it is the IRNA's position that there should be no further delay in the city taking the necessary steps to relieve the lagoon from the wastewater coming into it from septic systems. Septic systems within Vero Beach are only minimally above the water table, and there can be no question that drainage from even the best maintained of these is, in time, reaching the lagoon. Your council has been proactive on lagoon issues in the past. Now this other factor for deterioration of the lagoon's water quality must be addressed and without delay. We find in a letter from Mr. Thomas Frick, Director of the State of Florida Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration, that's a title, that the legislative amendment's failure in the state legislature this year was not necessarily a detriment to the system. Mr. Frick's department and the Florida Health Department are fully prepared to grant approval to your cities and others' applications to install hybrid wastewater treatment systems so long as they meet certain requirements. In the same letter, Mr. Frick described these requirements, quote, "There are different variations and configurations of these sewer collection systems, all of which require engineering design." It is the IRNA's position that the city is proceeding to test the hybrid system on a small number of residential properties using in-house staff would be a mistake. Relying on city employees to design a hybrid system might not meet the state's requirements. In correspondence to us from Mr. Frick's second-in-command, Mr. Jeffrey Mansfield, stated that there are two issues of import from a DEP standpoint. One, the type of collection system and the engineering demonstrates the system will operate as intended. And two, that the local government needs to be in control, that's in quotes, of the collection systems. On the basis of the first issue, we feel the city should hire qualified engineering consultants to design a hybrid system appropriate for our geographic and infrastructure conditions, and that the qualified consultant oversee and determine any testing. Further, the engineering consultant the city engages must have planned the installations of comparable systems for other municipalities and have received approval by the state of Florida. Mr. Mansfield's second issue is that the city must be prepared to engage experienced legal assistance to prepare a city ordinance that would meet the state requirement. The IRNA has a final recommendation that the city go much further in planning the construction of a hybrid wastewater collection system than just for a sample of properties. We think the minimum geographic area must be one or more neighborhoods. Our preference is for the city to ask the engineer to design a system for the entire barrier island that would cover all properties for which the city is currently responsible for the provision of water. In conclusion, we ask your council to take the following steps. To authorize the Utilities Division to prepare a request for proposals from engineers qualified to design a hybrid system for all properties within the city's contractual service area that are not already connected to central sewer, and to assign the legal department to develop an ordinance granting the city control of septic systems for the purpose of meeting Florida Department of Environmental Protection's requirements. We now know that both FLDEP and the Department of Health are prepared to approve a well-designed hybrid system. For the protection of our lagoon's water quality, it is time for the city to go for it. It's time to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamson. Further public comment?
Maybe take a break before we go.
Yes, but I will, before we do that, let's close public comment and we will come back at 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for the job you're doing.